On Twitter, there's Jeff M that says, in terms of building out the future roster cap-wise, do they lock in Slafkovsky and Guhle for 8 years extension this summer? How much would it take for each? And also for Jackeye? That's an interesting question. For one thing we can say regarding Slafkovsky is that the Canadians and Cole Caulfield waited after his entry level was done before they went on to negotiate. So it's not because the team wants to sign a player as soon as he is eligible for a new contract that it's naturally going to happen. Sometimes it will. Guys will, lock in as soon as possible, but in many cases, they will consider that it's in their best interest to play out that third year and show that they're even more valuable to their team than what they've shown in the first 2 years. So they'll prefer the ELS, the entry level to finish before they sign that second contract. So Slafkovsky, if you consider the steps that he's taken from his second year compared to the first, well, he would have every right to say, well, you like my second year, well, wait until you see my third one. Yeah. And because it's going to be another huge step, and then the number would be different. The problem for Montreal, though, and for any team, is that usually for talented young players, the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. So,
yeah, and so that's really what's at play here. The one thing is that Ken Hughes' predecessor, Mark Bergevin, signing Nick Suzuki to his current contract, and Cole Caulfield sliding in just under it, creates a bit of a template for Slafkovsky at some point, whether that's this offseason, whether that's next offseason. You don't necessarily have to stay under Nick's number, but I'm sure the Canadians are going to try and sell a vision to him that, listen, Nick's our captain, he's our leader. If we just all stay around that number, we can really build something special here. Whether Slafkovsky and his agent, Jerry Johansson, agree to that, that remains to be seen. I mean, that's the wild card. And so by waiting, I could see him, if they wanted to sign Slav to a contract, let's say this offseason, so an extension, which would kick in after next season.
Yeah.
And say, listen, we'll give you 8 times 7 million or 7.5, let's say. Would they go for that right away? That would be cashing your chips right now, not knowing what Slav will do next season. So there'd be an element of risk for both sides. Maybe Slav does not pick up where he lifts off. Maybe he doesn't continue playing the way he does. But I think that's kind of what it would look like based on if you're going to sign him for 8 years. You can also bridge him. There's all sorts of other options you can do. But if you're going to bridge him, then there's no point doing it right away. The only way I think the contract gets signed this summer is if it's an 8-year deal. And if it's in the neighborhood, at least, of what Suzuki and Caulfield signed for. Which is bonkers to even think about when in November it was whether he would be sent to Laval or not. So, but I think that's the reality of the situation right now, especially if Slav continues playing the way he has. The framework of his contract is already it's in black and white on the Canadians' ledger already. So I think he would have to accept something. Probably less than Cole, because frankly, Cole was more accomplished over his entry-level contract than Slav has been so far, which is why I think Slav would probably have some interest in waiting another year and doing it again and betting on himself and then seeing if he can get himself a really big contract.
Well, if he continues on that progression, the Canadians would be happy to pay more because it means that they've got a better player. There is an element of risk in giving him a lot of money based on a limited sample size of half a season, but you don't have to take that risk because you got that whole third year. So and also the other interesting situation is that with the cap moving up, there's going to be natural inflation that'll keep growing. There'll be new guys that are finishing their entry levels that will sign for new, very significant amounts out of their ELC. and they're bound to take the most money probably that's available out of that extra available money under the cap. It's the second contracts that really take the cake these days. But I wonder how long the Canadians will be able to keep that internal cap of you don't make more than Suzuki. And I think that this is.
I agree.
I think it's about to be broken. I think, and Slafkovsky, if he continues like that, and they waited for a third year at the end of his entry level, he would probably earn more than Suzuki and Caulfield.
Well, the number with Suzuki and Caulfield is not the 7.875 and the 7.85. The number with Suzuki and Caulfield is 9.4. They each take up 9.4% of the cap this season. Suzuki was a bit higher when he signed his deal. Cole is exactly 9.4. Next season, the cap going up, as you mentioned, to 87.5. 9.4% of that would be 8.225. So if I'm...
Yeah, and you actually have to look at how much it would would go up this season after that.
Exactly. Which is, it's,
so if you maintain,
it's projected to get to about 92 the season after that. So you're talking like from a cap percentage perspective, you could respect the Canadians' internal cap while going over Suzuki's actual dollar figure. Because it'd be easy to say, well, when Suzuki signed that, he signed for this percentage of the cap, so we are willing to sign for a little bit less than that, but it'll still be more from a dollar perspective.
Yeah, that's a popular way of looking at it.
That's how agents look at it. That's how agents look at it today, for sure.
Yeah, it's cap percentages.
Yeah.
So
as far as Guhle goes, I don't know if Guhle's contract is in the same category, but definitely there are some comparables. Particularly, I mean, I don't know to what extent he's comparable to a Jake Sanderson. Probably not. But there's I think I can't get a handle on what, but I think the Canadians would like to see Guhle play another season before getting into that. Personally, that's my view.
What, because of his play or because of his because of his health?
Because of his, I don't know. I mean, it's nothing that. But if you use Jake Sanderson as an example, and the Senators signed him, prior to the season, they signed him to an extension with 1 year left on his ELC, the way Guhle will have at the end of this season, and it's an 8-year deal at $8 million a year, $8,050,000. So. That's, I think, what I'd like to see from Guhle is like what's the offense going to be from him. So I think Jake Sanderson has an element of offense to his game that got him that contract. Guhle's is still developing, and it's not quite clear where that's going to go. So I would want to see that from both sides, from the Canadians' perspective and from his own perspective, because he's going to get paid more as a guy who produces points. He never has been a guy who produces points, even though he seems to have the tools to do it. He's never really done it, and that's the big question mark, because points get you paid. That's the reality. And so you're probably talking about the difference between a $6 or $7 million a year contract on a long-term deal or something like what Sanderson signed for, based on how you're going to produce offensively.
Yeah, it's a matter of opportunities, and in Guhle's case, I mean, it's funny because we're about to talk about Jackeye's contract, and Jackeye has been the one getting some reps on the second power play, at different moments in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But Guhle, if he was given that opportunity on a regular basis and with a healthy lineup, probably the PP2 would look better than its current iteration. He would be able to put up more points, but I don't think that we can expect that Guhle will ever be a PP1 type of guy, because he's got so many more responsibilities that increases ice time that he won't be given the keys to the power play anytime soon. Not with Matheson, and if Hudson makes it down the road, here's another guy who would prevent that from happening. So I think that there's what's challenging for a guy who has not shown that he could put up points a lot on a consistent basis is that when you're very good defensively and you face top opposition, it means that 5-on-5, you're not only going to neutralize the best offensive elements on the other side, but you're going to generate points yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a tall order.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, but with Jackeye, I don't know what he's going to, he has to be signed at the end of this season.
That's it. That's interesting.
I think the way his season's gone would make both sides agree that a bridge deal is what makes sense here. So I think a 2 to 3 year deal. But I mean, you look at how the Canadians have handled the Newhook deal and the Doc deal. Both of whom were RFAs, both of whom had question marks around them, and they each got 4-year contracts at pretty reasonable numbers. So maybe they make that sort of hybrid decision with Jackeye, where they give him a 4-year deal, 2.5 a year, 3 a year, somewhere in that range, and say, okay, now you got 4 years to, we're committing to you for 4 years. Now go out and show us that we're right. I could see them doing that. I mean, that would make sense.
There's an opportunity for a bargain there for the Canadians.
Yeah,
somewhere around the 3rd year, or
yeah. But I mean, that's their pattern is just as their pattern with Caulfield. Maybe should educate how they'll handle the Slafkovsky situation, where they would wait until his contract runs out. Maybe what they did with Doc and Newhook could educate us as to what they might do with Jackeye.
Right.